I never thought I'd be the guy searching through his wife's phone at 3 a.m. Never imagined I'd become someone who installs recording devices in his own car. But life has a way of transforming you into someone you don't recognize, when the person you love becomes someone you don't recognize first. The day I discovered my wife was cheating on me wasn't dramatic. No lipstick on collars, no suspicious hotel receipts. Instead, it was the small things that built up over time. Her sudden password changes on her phone, the way she angled her screen away from me when texting, those unexplained work emergencies that kept her out until midnight. After 15 years of marriage, you develop a sixth sense. You know when something's off. It started with Rachel's new promotion 6 months ago. My wife had always been ambitious, driven, qualities I'd admired since we met in graduate school. When she was offered the position of senior marketing director at Meridian Partners, one of Chicago's top firms, I was genuinely thrilled for her. The job came with a substantial pay increase, new responsibilities, and a new boss. James Harrington, the company's recently divorced executive VP. "He's absolutely brilliant, Michael," she gushed after her first week. "The way his mind works. He sees angles nobody else does." I nodded, happy she was excited about work. We clinked wine glasses across our dining room table, the same table where we'd planned our future together, where we'd decided, after years of deliberation, that our careers would be our focus rather than children. "To your success," I said, genuinely proud. Little did I know I was toasting to the beginning of the end. The changes were gradual. First came the late nights at the office, then the weekend strategy sessions, the business trips that mysteriously extended by a day or two. Each explanation seemed plausible on its own: a demanding project, an important client, a last-minute presentation. But together they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. Then there was the distance between us, the conversations that never went deeper than surface level, the declining frequency of our intimacy, always explained away by exhaustion or stress. Even on the rare nights we were both home, Rachel seemed elsewhere, checking her phone constantly, smiling at messages that were apparently not worth sharing. I tried talking to her about it multiple times. "I feel like we're drifting apart," I said one night as we prepared for bed, the space between our pillows seeming wider than ever. Rachel sighed, not looking up from her phone. "It's just work, Michael. This new position is demanding. I told you it would be." "It's more than that," I pressed. "You're physically here, but mentally, you're somewhere else. With someone else, maybe?" That got her attention. Her head snapped up, eyes flashing with indignation that seemed just a touch too rehearsed. "Are you accusing me of something? Because after 15 years, I'd expect more trust than that." Her response, the immediate defensiveness, the way she turned my concern into an attack on her, only deepened my suspicions. But I backed down, apologized even, because that's what I always did. Michael Walsh, the reasonable one, the understanding husband who never wanted to rock the boat. Looking back, I realized I was afraid of the truth, afraid that pressing harder would reveal something I couldn't unknow. For weeks, I watched and waited, gathering mental notes but taking no action. I'd never been the jealous, suspicious type. The thought of checking her phone or email made me feel physically ill, like I was betraying her by doubting her. Then came that Tuesday in April. I'd left work early with a migraine, one of those debilitating ones that left me sensitive to light and sound. I texted Rachel but received no response, not unusual given her meeting schedule. When I arrived home, I went straight to our bedroom, took my medication, and fell into a heavy sleep. I woke hours later to the sound of the garage door. Through the bedroom window, I could see Rachel's car pulling in. But instead of coming inside immediately, she remained in the car. Even from upstairs, I could see the blue glow of her phone illuminating her face. What held my attention wasn't that she was on her phone. It was that she was clearly emotional, animated in a way she rarely was with me anymore. Smiling, then serious, then bringing her hand to her mouth in what looked like a suppressed laugh. 15 minutes she sat there, in our garage, in our car, having what appeared to be the most engaging conversation of her day. Not with her husband of 15 years, but with someone else, somewhere else. When she finally came inside, her face was composed, neutral, the animation I'd witnessed completely gone. "How's your head?" she asked, setting her bag down. "Better," I lied. The pain in my head had subsided, but a new one was forming in my chest. That night, as she slept beside me, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. The next day, I purchased a small recording device, nothing elaborate, just a basic voice-activated recorder about the size of a USB drive, the kind people use to record lectures or meetings. I told myself it was just to confirm my suspicions were wrong, that I'd hear nothing but work calls, and maybe her singing along to the radio, something she always denied doing when I was in the car. The installation was simple. I placed it under the passenger seat, secured with adhesive Velcro, undetectable unless someone was specifically looking for it. Then I waited. For 2 days, nothing happened. Rachel drove to work and back, made a few mundane calls to her mother, a friend about lunch plans. Normal, everyday stuff that made me feel increasingly foolish for my suspicions. On the 3rd day, I almost removed the device, disgusted with myself for the invasion of privacy. Thank God I didn't. On day 4, I retrieved the recorder while Rachel was showering, transferred the audio files to my laptop, put on my headphones, and my world collapsed. The first recording that caught my attention was from Wednesday afternoon. Rachel's voice, but not her normal tone, softer, more intimate. "I can't stop thinking about yesterday," she said. A male voice responded, though slightly muffled, likely on speakerphone. "Neither can I. When can I see you again?" "Michael has that alumni dinner tomorrow night. He'll be gone until at least 10. "Perfect. The usual place." Rachel's laugh, a specific laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in months. "Unless you want to be adventurous, we could always use the back seat again." My stomach turned. The back seat of our car. The car I'd helped her pick out 3 years ago. The car we'd taken on weekend trips to Michigan. They'd been together in our car. I fast-forwarded through several recordings, each more devastating than the last. Details of their encounters. Plans for future meetings. Inside jokes that made her giggle like a schoolgirl. Then came a conversation that stopped me cold. "James, we need to talk about Michael." A sigh from him. "What about him?" "He's getting suspicious, asking questions. I caught him looking at my phone the other day." "What did you tell him?" "The usual. That I'm stressed with work, that I need space." A pause. "Maybe it's time, Rachel." "Time for what?" "You know what. We've been discussing it for months. You're not happy with him. Haven't been for years, according to you." Another pause, longer this time. "It's complicated. Only because you're making it complicated. Look, the Tokyo expansion is happening. I'm going to need someone to head up marketing operations there. That someone could be you. Japan? James, that's a huge move. A huge opportunity for both of us. Think about it, a fresh start together. No more sneaking around." The silence that followed felt eternal. What about the financial aspects? Rachel finally asked. The house is in both our names, and Michael's business. That's what lawyers are for, sweetheart. Besides, with what we know about his company's situation, he'll be in no position to fight you on anything. My blood ran cold. What did they know about my company's situation? I'm an architectural consultant, specializing in historical renovations. 3 years ago, I started my own small firm after working for one of the larger companies in Chicago. Rachel had been supportive, at least outwardly, though she'd expressed concerns about the financial risk. Business had been good initially, but the past year had been challenging. A major project had fallen through, and I'd been struggling to land new clients. Rachel knew things were tight, but I hadn't shared just how precarious our situation was. I'd taken out a substantial loan to keep the business afloat, using our house as collateral, something I hadn't told her about. Or so I thought. I still can't believe he remortgaged the house without telling you, James continued. That alone would give you grounds. How did he know about the mortgage? I'd kept those papers in my office in a locked drawer. Then it hit me. The night Rachel had surprised me at my office with dinner, about 2 months ago. She'd arrived early, said my assistant had let her in. I'd found her at my desk, allegedly looking for a phone charger. She'd been searching through my files. Let's not talk about Michael anymore. Rachel's voice pulled me back to the recording. Not when we have better things to do with our time. The audio became muffled, but I could still make out the rustling of clothing, heavy breathing, murmured words I couldn't bear to decipher. I ripped off my headphones, bile rising in my throat. It wasn't just the infidelity. It was the calculated betrayal, the planning, the discussions about my financial struggles as leverage against me. And what exactly did they know about my company's situation that I didn't? I spent the next hour combing through my business records, searching for anything unusual. Nothing seemed immediately wrong, but I wasn't an accountant. My bookkeeper, Diane, handled most of the financial details, reporting to me monthly. Diane, who had been recommended by Rachel. With shaking hands, I called my bank, requesting information about recent transactions. After verifying my identity, the customer service representative confirmed my fears. Yes, Mr. Walsh. We show a wire transfer from your business account to Astoria Holdings on April 15th for $28,500. The authorization was processed online using your credentials. I had never heard of Astoria Holdings, never authorized such a transfer. Can you tell me who initiated this transfer? It appears the transaction was completed through your online banking portal at 2:17 p.m. on the 15th, April 15th. I'd been at a client meeting in Milwaukee that day. My laptop had been at home, where Rachel had been working remotely. I thanked the representative and hung up, my mind racing. $28,000, nearly all that remained in my business account, transferred to an unknown entity, using my credentials. This wasn't just an affair. This was something far more sinister. I needed proof, more than just audio recordings of intimate conversations. I needed to understand exactly what they were planning, how deep this betrayal went. So I did something I'm not proud of, something that crossed a line I never thought I'd cross. I upgraded my surveillance. The next day, while Rachel was at her regular Friday hair appointment, I installed not just an audio recorder but a small camera in the car positioned discreetly in the rearview mirror casing, angled to capture both front and back seats. I also placed a more sophisticated recording device that could capture clearer audio, even from the back seat. I felt sick doing it. This wasn't me. But then again, The woman planning to destroy me while sleeping beside me every night wasn't the Rachel I thought I knew either. That evening, I put on a convincing performance about the alumni dinner I supposedly had. In reality, I parked 2 blocks away from our house, logged into the surveillance system from my tablet, and waited. 20 minutes after I left, James's black Tesla pulled into our street. Not even trying to be discreet. He parked directly in front of our house. Our neighbors could easily see him. Either he didn't care who knew, or they were past the point of caution. Rachel emerged from our front door wearing a dress I'd never seen before, sleek, black, considerably more revealing than her usual style. She practically skipped to his car. They didn't go to a hotel. They didn't go to a restaurant. Instead, after a brief drive, they pulled into the private garage of a high-rise downtown, a building I recognized as one of Chicago's most exclusive residential towers. The camera angle didn't allow me to see exactly which unit they entered, but it didn't matter. The betrayal was complete, documented, undeniable. I returned home before her, removing any trace of my presence. When she came back around 9:30, earlier than she'd told James I'd return, she found me just arriving myself, loosening my tie as if I'd actually attended the alumni event. "How was your quiet night in?" I asked casually. Without missing a beat, she responded, "Uneventful. Just caught up on some Netflix and had a long bath. How was the dinner?" "Same boring speeches as every year," I lied, matching her deception with my own. We moved around each other that night like actors in a play, performing the roles of husband and wife while being anything but. Over the weekend, I reviewed more recordings, discovering patterns to their meetings, references to future plans. But it was a conversation recorded Monday afternoon that truly revealed the depth of their scheme. "The paperwork is ready," James said. "My attorney says once you file, we can freeze his access to your joint accounts immediately." "What about the business loan issue?" Rachel asked. "Even better than we hoped. Diane confirmed he's been mixing business and personal expenses for months. It's technically fraud, especially with that SBA loan he took out." My heart stopped. The Small Business Administration loan I'd secured last year had strict guidelines about how the funds could be used. I'd been careful to follow them precisely, or so I thought. "So if he fights the divorce," Rachel began, "we have leverage, financial impropriety, possible fraud charges. He'll agree to your terms just to avoid investigation." Their laughter mingled together, conspiratorial and cold. "And the Tokyo timeline?" she asked. "We announce the expansion next month. Your appointment as head of Asia-Pacific operations follows immediately. By fall, we'll be setting up our new life together." "It seems too good to be true," Rachel said, her voice softer now. "After all we've been through to get here, we deserve this. Just think 2 more months and you'll be free of him, free of this stifling life you've outgrown." The conversation continued, detailing their plans for after the divorce. The apartment James had already secured in Tokyo. The shared bank account they'd established at an international bank. How they'd met not 6 months ago as I'd assumed, but over a year earlier at a marketing conference in New York. A full year of deception, of planning, of steadily undermining my business while pretending to support me. As I listened, something inside me shifted. The pain and shock gave way to something colder, more calculated. If they wanted to play a game of financial chess, they'd find I wasn't the pawn they thought me to be. I spent that entire night planning my counter-strategy. The first step was securing my evidence. I backed up all recordings to multiple secure cloud locations, ensuring they couldn't be deleted or claimed to be fabricated. Next, I needed to understand exactly what they'd done to my business. I hired a forensic accountant, not anyone connected to Rachel, but a specialist recommended by my college roommate who now worked for the FBI. Within days, the picture became clear. Diane, Rachel's recommended bookkeeper, had been systematically misclassifying my expenses for months, creating a paper trail that made it appear I was using business funds for personal expenses. Small discrepancies, nothing I would notice in regular reports, but together they told a damaging story. The transfer to Astoria Holdings was just the final move, a large enough sum to cause immediate cash flow problems, forcing me to either take out another loan or miss payments to vendors. Further investigation revealed that Astoria Holdings was a shell company recently established in Delaware. The registered agent was a law firm known for handling James Harrington's business affairs. They hadn't just planned to leave me, they'd planned to destroy me. With this knowledge, I began implementing my response. First, I transferred what remaining funds I could to a new business account at a different bank. Then I fired Diane, citing restructuring rather than revealing what I knew. I contacted my own attorney, not our family lawyer, who had also been Rachel's recommendation, explaining the situation and presenting the evidence I'd gathered. His advice was clear. Document everything, correct the financial discrepancies immediately, and prepare for what would likely be a contentious divorce. But I wasn't just preparing for defense. I was planning my own offensive strategy. Through my architect connections, I discreetly inquired about Meridian Partners and their supposed Tokyo expansion. What I discovered was interesting. There were indeed plans for Asian market expansion, but nothing had been finalized. Moreover, the company's board of directors had strict policies against romantic relationships between executives and their direct reports. James had been promising Rachel a position that wasn't his to give, at least not without board approval, which would require disclosure of their relationship. I also learned something. James probably didn't want Rachel to know he was still legally married. His divorce proceedings had been filed, but were stalled over asset disputes. He wasn't legally free to remarry or even make the public commitments he'd been promising Rachel. Armed with this information, I could have confronted Rachel immediately, could have laid out everything I knew and watched her world collapse as mine had. But that would have been too quick, too merciful. Instead, I continued gathering evidence, documenting every conversation, every plan they made. I consulted with my attorney about the legality of my recordings in Illinois. All parties typically must consent to being recorded, but there are exceptions for documenting criminal activity, which their financial machinations potentially qualified as. For 2 more weeks, I lived a double life, the oblivious husband by night, the strategic planner by day. I corrected the financial discrepancies Diane had created, filed reports with the SBA explaining the situation, and secured statements from vendors confirming legitimate business expenses. All while watching Rachel and James dig their hole deeper. The lawyers say we should wait until after the Phillips contract is signed before filing the papers, Rachel said on one recording. That way, when his business inevitably fails, it can't be traced back to anything we did. Smart, James replied. And we're still on track for the asset transfer next week. Yes. I've been moving money to my personal account in small amounts. He never checks the statements anyway. They had no idea I was 10 steps ahead of them now. The Phillips contract they mentioned was a major project my firm had been pursuing, a historical restoration worth potentially millions. What Rachel didn't know was that I'd already secured it, having impressed the clients with both my portfolio and my detailed understanding of their needs. The financial foundation they were trying to destroy was already being rebuilt. As for her gradual siphoning of our joint accounts, I'd been documenting every unauthorized transfer, building a case for financial misconduct that would shock even the most jaded divorce court judge. 3 days before Rachel planned to serve me with divorce papers, a date I knew from their recorded conversations, I made my move. It began with a meeting with Meridian Partners' board of directors. As a respected professional in Chicago's business community, securing the meeting wasn't difficult, especially when I mentioned potential ethical concerns involving their executive VP. I presented selected evidence of James and Rachel's relationship, nothing explicit, just enough to establish clear violation of company policy. I also shared documentation suggesting James had been promising organizational changes without board approval, potentially committing the company to expenses and structural shifts they hadn't authorized. I didn't need to ask for any specific action. The board's expressions made it clear what would follow. Next, I contacted James's estranged wife, Elaine. Our conversation was brief but productive. She'd suspected his infidelity but lacked proof. The evidence I provided would be invaluable in their ongoing divorce proceedings, particularly the recordings where he discussed hidden assets. In return, she shared financial documents showing James had been concealing substantial resources that, by law, should have been declared in his divorce proceedings. Finally, I prepared detailed documentation for Rachel's parents, conservative, religious people who had always treated me like a son. People who valued honesty and integrity above all. People who had financially supported Rachel through graduate school with the money they'd saved for retirement, believing in her and our marriage. The stage was set, all the pieces in position. The day before Rachel planned to blindside me with divorce papers, I didn't go to work. Instead, when she left for the office, I began systematically updating my status. First, I transferred my personal belongings to a furnished apartment I'd rented under a business LLC. Nothing obvious, Rachel wouldn't immediately notice the missing items, but everything I truly valued was now secure. Next, I left documentation packages with my attorney, instructing him to deliver them to specific parties at precise times the following day. Finally, I wrote Rachel a letter handwritten, on the stationery she'd given me for our anniversary 5 years earlier. I placed it on our bed, along with my wedding ring. When I finished, I took one last look around the house we'd shared for 12 years. The living room where we'd talked late into the night during the early years of our marriage. The kitchen where we'd cooked Sunday brunches. The bedroom where we'd loved each other, truly loved each other, once upon a time. Then I walked out, closing the door on that chapter of my life. The next morning unfolded exactly according to plan. At 9 a.m., the board of directors at Meridian Partners called an emergency meeting with James and the legal department. At 9:30 a.m., my attorney delivered documentation to Rachel's parents, along with a respectful letter explaining my actions and expressing my regret for bearing such news. At 10 a.m., James's wife's attorney submitted updated filings in their divorce case, including evidence of hidden assets and ongoing infidelity. At 10:30 a.m., Rachel was called into the board meeting already in progress. I wasn't present for what happened in that meeting, but I didn't need to be. The cascade of consequences I'd set in motion was inevitable. Rachel's company phone began ringing at 11:45 a.m. calls from her parents that she initially sent to voicemail. By the third call, she picked up, stepping out of the boardroom for what turned into a devastating conversation. By noon, both Rachel and James had been placed on administrative leave, pending investigation into policy violations and potential misuse of company resources. By 2 p.m., Rachel returned home not to serve me with divorce papers as planned, but to find my letter and ring instead. I watched the security camera feed from my new apartment as she entered the house, moving with the confidence of someone who believed they were in control of the situation. I watched that confidence crumble as she read my letter, detailing everything I knew and everything I'd done in response. Her face transformed from confusion to disbelief to horror as she realized the chain reaction that had been triggered. Frantic calls to James went straight to voicemail. He was still dealing with his own professional apocalypse. When her phone rang again, it was her father. Even without audio, I could see the conversation was devastating. Her parents had funded her education, celebrated our marriage, and occasionally even helped with our mortgage during lean times. Their disappointment would cut deeper than any legal consequence. I didn't continue watching after that. I wasn't interested in her pain, only in justice. Over the following weeks, the situation unraveled precisely as I'd orchestrated. Rachel and James were both terminated from Meridian Partners for policy violations and ethical breaches. James's divorce proceedings accelerated, with the judge taking a dim view of his financial deceptions. The money transfer to Astoria Holdings was reversed following legal action, with additional penalties assessed against the shell company. My business not only survived, but thrived, as the Phillips contract brought both revenue and prestige, leading to additional projects. When Rachel finally filed for divorce, not according to her original triumphant plan, but from a position of professional disgrace and financial precarity, my attorney was fully prepared. The evidence of her financial misconduct, combined with the documented infidelity, resulted in a settlement far different from what she and James had envisioned. She didn't get half of everything. She didn't get leverage from manufactured evidence of business impropriety. Instead, she got a sobering lesson in consequences. As for their dreams of Tokyo, the closest either of them got was the Japanese restaurant where they met to commiserate over their shattered plans. It's been 2 years since that chapter of my life closed. 2 years of rebuilding, reflecting, and eventually healing. My business has expanded legitimately and successfully. I now employ 15 people and have opened a second office in Milwaukee. The historical restoration projects I once struggled to secure now come to me based on reputation and referrals. Rachel moved to Atlanta eventually. I heard she's working for a smaller marketing firm, a significant step down from her executive aspirations, but a fresh start nonetheless. James faced more serious consequences, including legal actions related to financial improprieties that extended beyond what he'd done regarding my business. People sometimes ask if I regret my methods: the surveillance, the calculated response, the public exposure of their betrayal. They wonder if I might have handled things differently, more privately perhaps. I don't lose sleep over it. What I did wasn't about revenge, though I can't deny the satisfaction of seeing justice served. It was about refusing to be a victim in a story they were writing, about reclaiming my narrative when they sought to reduce me to a footnote in theirs. The recordings that began as evidence of infidelity revealed something far more sinister: a coordinated attack on my livelihood, my reputation, my future. My response was proportional to the threat. If there's a lesson in all of this, perhaps it's about awareness of our relationships, our businesses, our lives, about trusting instincts when something feels wrong, even when questioning makes you uncomfortable, about the importance of maintaining your own identity and agency within a relationship. Or maybe the lesson is simpler: don't plot someone's destruction in their car. They might be listening. Thank you for listening to this episode. If this story resonated with you or you've experienced something similar, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. How would you have handled this situation? What warning signs might you have noticed earlier? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of pivotal life moments and the decisions that define us.